The Great Fire of London, 1666. How a bakery fire destroyed a city. Imagine a city, a bustling metropolis, the heart of an empire, reduced to ash in just 4 days. A city consumed, not by an invading army, but by a single errant spark. This is the story of London, 1666, and the inferno that erased centuries of history. August 1666. London was a city of contradictions. Magnificent St. Paul's Cathedral loomed over a labyrinth of narrow, crowded streets. Prosperity mingled with poverty, innovation with tradition. But beneath the surface of its wooden houses and tightly packed lanes, a deadly secret lay dormant. A secret of dry timbers, thatched roofs, and an utter lack of preparation for the inevitable. It all began on Pudding Lane. In the early hours of Sunday, September 2nd, the city slept oblivious. Thomas Fariner, baker to King Charles II, had extinguished his oven for the night. Or so he thought. A solitary ember, a tiny red speck, clung to the hearth, biding its time as the hours ticked by. That ember found purchase. Straw, piled carelessly, ignited. Within moments, the baker's house was ablaze. Fariner and his family barely escaped, scrambling from an upstairs window. Their maid, however, was not so lucky. The first victim of what would become an unthinkable catastrophe. The alarm was raised, but the system was laughably inadequate. London had no professional fire brigade. Firefighting was a communal effort, relying on buckets of water, axes, and rudimentary hand squirts. Against the furious appetite of this burgeoning inferno, it was less than a drop in the ocean. The conditions were a fire starter's dream. A long, hot summer had baked the timber-framed houses to tinder-dry perfection. A strong easterly wind, a relentless tormentor, fanned the flames with brutal efficiency. The narrow streets, designed for carts and pedestrians, became deadly funnels, accelerating the fire's march. Panic rippled through the city. Residents, roused from their sleep, emerged to a horrifying spectacle. Their homes, their livelihoods, vanishing before their eyes. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, arrived on the scene, bewildered and overwhelmed. "Pish! A woman might piss it out," he reportedly declared, famously underestimating the monster he faced. A terrible miscalculation that would cost him, and London, dearly. What could stop it? Fire breaks, the deliberate demolition of houses to create gaps the fire couldn't cross, were the only viable solution. But demolishing a house required permission, and in the chaos, authority was paralyzed. Owners refused to sacrifice their property, hoping against hope that the fire would spare them. They were wrong. Monday, September 3rd. The fire raged with renewed ferocity. It devoured entire parishes, sweeping westward. The dense commercial district, packed with warehouses storing oil, timber, and spirits, became a fuel-rich furnace. The heat was so intense it melted lead-on roofs, turning it into molten rivers that poured down the streets. The iconic St. Paul's Cathedral, a symbol of London's spiritual heart, seemed impregnable. Its stone walls offered a false sense of security. But as the fire reached its wooden scaffolding, erected for repairs, and consumed the surrounding booksellers' shops, packed with paper and vellum, the unthinkable began to happen. Tuesday, September 4th. The cathedral succumbed. Witnesses described the spectacle as terrifyingly beautiful, a mountain of fire devouring the ancient edifice. The lead roof melted with a deafening roar, and the massive stones cracked and exploded from the heat. A pillar of smoke, visible for miles, marked the demise of one of Europe's grandest churches. Thousands of citizens were now homeless, displaced, and utterly destitute. They flocked to the open fields of Islington and Moorfields, their only possessions what they could carry. From these vantage points, they witnessed the apocalyptic destruction of their city, a sea of flames licking at the heavens. The horror was etched onto their faces as the scale of the disaster became undeniable. King Charles II himself took charge. Alongside his brother, James, Duke of York, he rode through the burning streets, barking orders, coordinating firefighting efforts. Soldiers were pressed into service, and crucial decisions were finally made. Fire breaks, once resisted, were now enforced with military precision. Houses were blown up with gunpowder to create gaps, a desperate gamble against the inferno. Wednesday, September 5th. A glimmer of hope. The wind, which had been the fire's greatest ally, began to abate, shifting direction, and the fire breaks, brutally implemented, began to take effect. The monster, having devoured a significant portion of the city, was finally being starved of fuel. By Thursday, September 6th, the Great Fire was largely extinguished. But the city that remained was a scene of utter devastation. 87 churches, including St. Paul's, 13,200 houses, and innumerable public buildings lay in ruins. Over 4/5 of the city within the ancient Roman wall was destroyed. Miraculously, the official death toll was reported as just 6 people, a figure so shockingly low that historians have long questioned its accuracy. It's likely that many poor, unrecorded citizens perished in the flames, their bodies consumed beyond recognition, their stories lost to history. The immediate aftermath was a landscape of desolation. But from the ashes, a new London would rise. The catastrophe forced a complete rethinking of urban planning. Sir Christopher Wren, the brilliant architect, was tasked with redesigning the city. He proposed grand avenues and public squares, but practicalities and property disputes meant a more organic, though still improved, rebuilding. The new London was built with brick and stone, not timber. Wider streets, better access to the river, and improved fire regulations became law. The lessons learned from the fire were painful, but they forged a stronger, more resilient city. Today, a towering monument stands near Pudding Lane, a poignant reminder of that fateful bakery fire. It's not just a monument to destruction, but to resilience, to the indomitable spirit of a city that refused to stay defeated. The Great Fire of London was a tragedy of immense proportions, a stark warning from history about vulnerability and preparedness. But it also proved to be a crucible, forging a new London from the ashes, a city that literally rose from the flames, stronger, safer, and forever etched into the annals of time. A terrifying tale of how a single spark can bring an empire to its knees, and how the will to rebuild can conquer even the most devastating inferno.
Thanks for watching this video. Why not take a few seconds of your time to like the video, subscribe and share.